Get your black ass out of my seat. That sentence didn't come from a movie. It happened, on a quiet Thursday morning at Gate 14B, right in front of dozens of passengers and one stunned flight crew. Catherine Summers said it without hesitation. With her designer purse slung over one shoulder and her phone pressed to her cheek, she shoved Elijah Brooks out of seat 1A like she was removing a stain from her life. She had no idea who he was. And in her mind, it didn't matter. He was dressed too casually. He didn't carry the air of first class. He wasn't someone worth listening to. But Elijah Brooks wasn't just another black man traveling in jeans and a denim jacket. He was the CEO of American Horizon Air, the airline she thought she had status on. He owned 71% of it. And in that moment, he owned the truth. This isn't fiction. This is a black story. It's a story of perception, power, and prejudice. It's what happens when a quiet man refuses to be humiliated, and instead turns the entire flight, the company, and the national conversation into a masterclass on dignity. Phones were recording. Comments were flying. Hashtags started trending before takeoff. And yet, Elijah never raised his voice. Instead, he pulled out a phone, opened an app, and calmly proved what no one wanted to believe. That the man they dismissed owned the plane they were sitting on. If that doesn't stop you in your tracks, keep watching. Because this isn't just a story about seating arrangements. It's about how quick we are to judge. And what it looks like when those judgments fall apart in real time. This is a black story the world needs to hear. And if you believe in stories that matter, stick around. Subscribe for more true stories that shift the culture, expose the truth, and rewrite the rules. Now take a breath. Look closer. And let's begin. It was supposed to be a routine flight. Flight AHA 342 from San Francisco to Washington, D.C. A 3-hour journey, clear skies, no delays, and a flight manifest stacked with corporate travelers, lobbyists, and tech executives headed to the nation's capital. The first-class cabin of American Horizon Air was nearly full. Leather seats, personalized service, noise-canceling headsets, and a hot towel waiting on each armrest. Everything you'd expect for a $1,000 seat. Elijah Brooks boarded early. No entourage. No fanfare. Just a man in his 40s, wearing a fitted navy denim jacket over a plain white tee. His luggage? A single, high-end leather duffel and a briefcase with initials subtly embossed in gold. To most passengers, he looked like someone who had wandered into the wrong cabin. His shoes were clean but not flashy. His posture was confident but relaxed. And that was the first problem. People expect CEOs to wear tailored suits, speak loudly, and announce themselves with title and tone. Elijah did none of that. He boarded quietly, nodded at the flight crew, and took seat 1A without a word. Then came Catherine Summers. She boarded late, loud, and laughing into her phone. Blonde, polished, wrapped in a beige designer coat. Her heels clicked like a metronome on the aisle floor. She paused when she reached 1A, her laughter vanishing like a switch had been flipped. "What is this?" she asked, mostly to herself. "No. This can't be right." Then she said it. Loud enough for rows 2 through 5 to hear. "Get your black ass out of my seat." She did not wait for a response. She grabbed Elijah's shoulder, forced him up, and sat down like nothing happened. Like he was invisible. A few heads turned. Some passengers lowered their phones in disbelief. Others stared straight ahead, not wanting to get involved. The flight attendant, Heather, approached. Not with concern, but with assumption. "Sir," she said to Elijah, "I think you're in the wrong seat. Coach is behind you." No one asked for his ticket. No one verified anything. Elijah stood there, quiet. One hand in his pocket. The other holding his boarding pass. The cabin air felt heavier now. Tension, thick and unmistakable, settled over the first-class cabin like a fog. And just like that, a normal boarding process became a national moment in the making. Catherine leaned back in seat 1A as if she had just conquered something. She crossed her legs, adjusted her scarf, and looked up at Elijah like he was a service issue, not a person. "I just can't anymore," she said, not to him, but loud enough for everyone nearby. "These people always try to push boundaries." She pulled out her phone and started typing furiously, probably texting a friend or venting on social media. Her voice was sharp, her tone dripping with contempt. Elijah stood there, his boarding pass still in hand. The ink on the seat number, 1A, was beginning to smudge from the pressure of his grip. But still, he said nothing. Across the aisle, a woman in seat 1B looked up from her magazine. She caught his eyes for just a second, then looked away. Heather, the flight attendant, hadn't moved. She hovered near the galley, eyes locked on Elijah like he was a disturbance she didn't want to escalate. But her silence spoke volumes. Then Mark, the senior flight attendant, walked up. "Sir," he said, voice tight, rehearsed, "you need to return to your assigned seat. We're preparing for takeoff." "I am in my assigned seat," Elijah replied calmly, offering the boarding pass again. Mark didn't even glance at it. "This is first class," he said. His tone wasn't loud, but it was firm, like a boundary being redrawn right in front of everyone. And that was the moment the whispers started. Row 3. "Macia." Someone muttered. "Did she really say that?" Another voice followed. "They didn't even check his ticket." Elijah heard it all. Still, he remained centered. "Sir," Mark said again, "if you continue to delay boarding, we'll have to involve security." It wasn't a request. It was a warning. A message not just to Elijah, but to anyone watching: back down or be removed. A middle-aged man in seat 2D cleared his throat. "Excuse me, but maybe just check the guy's ticket?" Mark ignored him. Catherine rolled her eyes. "Please. If we have to verify every fake upgrade, we'll never leave the gate." The cabin had grown quieter. Not peaceful. Just tense. Not a single person had asked to see Elijah's boarding pass. Not once. Because when bias is deeply rooted, it doesn't shout. It whispers. It assumes. And sometimes, it moves faster than truth. In seat 4C, a teenage girl named Tiana Coleman adjusted her phone just slightly. She had been recording silently from the moment Catherine shoved Elijah out of seat 1A. At first, she thought she was just capturing a nasty moment. Something she might show her friends later and shake her head about. But as the scene escalated and the crew doubled down, she hit "Go Live" on her TikTok. Within seconds, her screen filled with comments. "Wait, what did she just say? Why won't they check his boarding pass? This is wild. This is racist." Her follower count jumped from 3,000 to 6,500 in the first 3 minutes. The number kept climbing. Catherine still had no idea she was being recorded. She was busy ranting to the flight attendant. "I've been Platinum Elite with AHA for 7 years. I pay top dollar to avoid this kind of disruption," she snapped. If he belonged in first class, he wouldn't be wearing discount sneakers. Elijah glanced down at his shoes. Simple, comfortable, clean. The kind you wear when you travel constantly for work. Tiana zoomed in. The image was crisp. The tension was real. She whispered softly to her live stream. "This man showed his ticket 3 times. They're ignoring him. Everyone sees it. Nobody's doing anything." The comments exploded. "Tag the airline. Get his name. This has to go viral." Behind Tiana, someone whispered, "Is this really happening?" Another voice replied, "It's always happening. Just not usually with cameras rolling." More phones appeared. More passengers started recording. Quietly, carefully. No one wanted to be part of the problem, but they didn't want to stay silent either. The viewer count passed 10,000. Then someone posted the hashtag. #seat1A. Within minutes, it was trending on Twitter. Catherine kept talking. "He's clearly trying to scam his way up here. I've seen this before. Flash a fake ticket. Act like you belong. But come on, just look at him. That line hit like a hammer. Tiana's livestream chat exploded with outrage. Elijah still said nothing. He stood steady, still offering the boarding pass that no one would take. But now, it didn't matter who took it. Because the whole world was watching. And what was once just another act of quiet discrimination had become a public reckoning in real time. Elijah didn't raise his voice. He didn't argue. He didn't ask for help. He simply took a breath, stepped back from the seat, and pulled out his phone. Not with the panic of someone calling for rescue, but with the calm precision of someone pulling up the blueprints to a building he designed. The screen lit up. American Horizon Air. A custom interface. Not the app regular passengers used. This one had tabs labeled Executive Access, Internal Protocols, and Emergency Override. The passengers around him didn't notice. But the live stream caught every tap, every swipe, every second of control in the hands of a man they had dismissed. Elijah scrolled through the menu and tapped Activate, CEO Presence Mode. A pop-up appeared. Confirm identity. Facial scan, thumbprint, employee badge. He did all three without hesitation. The screen shifted. A new dashboard appeared. At the top, bold white letters on a navy blue background. Elijah Brooks, Chief Executive Officer, American Horizon Air. Tiana, still filming, gasped audibly. Her chat erupted. Wait. What? He's the CEO? That explains everything. OMG, she's done. Still, no one on the crew noticed. Mark was mid-sentence, lecturing Elijah on airline protocol and the importance of following directions. You can't just walk up here and claim any seat you want, Mark said, arms crossed. That's not how this works. Elijah didn't look at him. He held his phone up slightly, screen facing outward, making sure the cameras saw what needed to be seen. The chat screamed. Show the screen. Let them see. Expose this now. Elijah turned slightly, just enough for Tiana's camera to capture the words. Her phone buzzed with a wave of notifications. Screenshot after screenshot. Catherine was still rambling about loyalty programs and how she'd be writing a letter to the board. Elijah glanced at her briefly, then looked back at the flight attendant. I don't need to claim a seat, he said, voice steady, calm. I assigned them. Heather finally caught sight of the screen. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened slightly. But before she could say anything, the phone buzzed. CEO Presence Protocol activated. Internal team notified. Compliance officer en route. Elijah locked the screen. He had made his move. Now it was time for the system to answer. The cabin was nearly silent now, except for the low hum of overhead fans and the occasional chime from incoming messages on Tiana's phone. Then came the sound that always changed everything. Heavy boots stepping onto the jet bridge. Security had arrived. 2 uniformed officers entered the aircraft. One was tall, in his late 40s, with graying temples and a sharp jawline. His badge read Officer Ryan Wallace. The other, younger, more reserved, was Officer Naomi Lee. They carried the kind of energy that made people sit straighter in their seats, even when they weren't involved. Mark turned to meet them, relief painted across his face. Officers, he began quickly. We have a situation. Passenger refuses to move from a seat he didn't pay for, causing a delay. Wallace nodded, professional but detached. Understood. We'll handle it. Elijah stayed right where he was, calm, phone in hand. Not moving, not defensive. Lee approached first. Sir, we'd like to ask you to step off the aircraft so we can resolve this away from other passengers. Elijah didn't flinch. Instead, he gently held up his phone once more. I believe it's best you take a look at this before making assumptions. Lee hesitated. That wasn't the reaction she expected. Wallace stepped closer and glanced at the screen. The logo of American Horizon Air was displayed prominently, but it was what came next that stopped him cold. Elijah Brooks. Chief Executive Officer. Authority level. All access. Wallace's eyes narrowed slightly. He reached for his radio, clicked once. "We've got a code Delta override. Stand by." "Sir," he said, lowering his voice. "I apologize. No one informed us." Elijah nodded. "I'm aware. That's part of the problem." Behind him, Catherine scoffed. "What is this, a magic trick?" Officer Lee turned toward her. "Ma'am, we'll ask you to remain silent while we verify the situation." Mark tried to speak again, but Wallace raised a hand. "Enough," he said firmly. "Until we complete verification, no further action will be taken." Heather finally stepped back. Her hands shook slightly. Tiana's livestream viewer count soared past 30,000. This wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore. It was a full-blown protocol breach. And for the first time since this began, the crew realized they weren't in charge anymore. Elijah didn't need to say much. The screen had already done the talking. But what no one knew, what no one even imagined, was that this wasn't an accident. It wasn't just a man standing up for himself. It was a test. And the results were being recorded in real time. Elijah swiped up on his phone and opened his calendar. The screen brightened to show a packed agenda. There, in bold letters, visible to Officer Wallace, Officer Lee, and anyone glancing over his shoulder, it read, 3:45 p.m., Internal Audit Briefing. 4 p.m., Emergency Board Session. In-Flight Discrimination Protocol. 4:15 p.m., Department of Transportation Compliance Call. 5 p.m., Press Prep. CEO Statement to Media. It had all been scheduled before this flight even took off. Tiana gasped softly. "Wait. This was planned." Her live stream chat exploded. "Yo, he set this up." T knew. "This guy is 10 steps ahead." Elijah turned slightly toward Wallace. "This is not the first complaint I've reviewed about in-flight discrimination," he said quietly. "But it needed to be seen, felt, understood, not just filed." He opened a secure app, one built into the AHA executive tools, and began uploading video footage from nearby passengers, including Tiana's stream, which had already been flagged by the company's social media monitoring system. Across the country, at American Horizon's headquarters in Atlanta, alerts were lighting up dashboards. Legal, HR, public relations, operations. Executives were being pinged. Compliance officers were dialing in. The system was moving, and it was moving fast. Wallace stepped back and spoke into his radio. Confirming protocol override initiated by CEO. Compliance team requested on-site. In seat 1B, an older man in a navy blazer leaned over to Elijah. "Is this really happening?" Elijah nodded without breaking eye contact. "Yes, sir. And it's long overdue." Heather's voice cracked behind him. You were testing us?" "No," Elijah said calmly. "I was observing you." He didn't need anger. He didn't need volume. He had truth. And in corporate America, when truth is backed by authority, it doesn't need to shout. It just needs to be documented. And today, every second was. For the first time since boarding, Catherine Summers looked uncomfortable. Not defensive. Not smug. Just unsettled. She shifted in seat 1A, crossed her legs the opposite way, then back again. Her hands clutched her phone, eyes darting across the screen like she was searching for a way out. Elijah turned to her calmly. "Ma'am," he said, "you've insisted that this is your seat. Would you mind pulling up your boarding pass?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She glanced at Heather, then Mark, then at Officer Wallace, still standing to the side, silent but watching everything. I had my assistant book it," she stammered. "There must have been a mistake in the app." Elijah waited. I'm sure it's somewhere, she added, tapping on her screen. Heather stepped forward, trying to assist. Miss Summers, could I help you locate the digital boarding pass? No, Catherine snapped, then softened. It's fine. I've got it. She pulled up the American Horizon app, and after a few slow taps, the pass appeared. Tiana, still filming, leaned slightly to capture it from her seat. It read clearly, Seat 3A. Zone. First class. Not 1A. Mark froze. Heather looked away. The truth was now on the screen, undeniable. You've been in the wrong seat this entire time, Elijah said quietly. Catherine's face flushed. Well, I was confused. I thought. You thought I didn't belong, Elijah finished for her. And you counted on that assumption protecting you. Wallace took a step closer. Ma'am, we're going to need you to return to your assigned seat. But I already settled in, Catherine protested. And he wasn't even. No, Elijah interrupted. Let her finish. Let's hear the justification. The silence was deafening. Catherine swallowed hard. I misjudged the situation. That's all. But Elijah wasn't done. He tapped on his phone once more, pulling up the employee database, an internal tool accessible only to executives. He typed in her name, Catherine Summers, VP of Marketing, Divine Glow Cosmetics. Filed incident, internal bias complaint, 2019. Status, investigated. Warning issued. Diversity retraining completed. He turned the screen slightly for Officer Lee to see. This wasn't a one-time mistake, Elijah said. It's a pattern. Catherine's carefully curated image was unraveling. And for the first time, the mask she wore, status, charm, control, had cracked. Not by force, but by tact. The mood inside the cabin had shifted. What started as whispers of disbelief had turned into a quiet reckoning. People weren't just witnessing a confrontation anymore, they were witnessing a system waking up from autopilot. Elijah turned to Officer Wallace. Thank you for your assistance, he said. At this point, I'll take it from here. Wallace nodded and stepped back, fully aware that command had already changed hands. Elijah opened his phone again, this time to the internal AHA operations suite. He tapped into the compliance tab, and in less than 10 seconds, a real-time chat opened with the company's VP of Legal Affairs. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Code 1A escalation, he typed. Requesting immediate execution of passenger misconduct protocol and employee accountability action. A moment later, the response came through. Acknowledged. Legal and HR teams are standing by. Your authority confirmed. Executing immediate response measures. He then tapped into another section, Flight Crew Oversight. 4 employee profiles appeared on the screen. Heather Green, Mark Reynolds, Michelle Torres, Standby Crew, David Wilkins, Cabin Coordinator. Each one now marked with a red flag. He initiated a temporary suspension for all 4, pending full investigation. Not as punishment, but as protocol. Accountability had a process, and Elijah had written it himself. For company guidelines, Elijah said clearly, turning to Heather and Mark, you are now relieved of in-flight duties. Please step to the rear of the aircraft. Replacement crew is en route from standby. Heather's face went pale. Mark stood motionless for a moment, then nodded stiffly and moved down the aisle. Passengers watched, some stunned, others quietly nodding. Catherine stood abruptly. This is outrageous. I didn't commit a crime. No, Elijah replied calmly. But you violated passenger conduct policy. You verbally assaulted another traveler and refused crew instructions based on prejudice. He tapped once more. Catherine's information was logged and submitted to the Corporate Incident Review Board. As a result, he continued, you are being reassigned to your original seat, 3A. If you refuse, you will be removed from this flight. Her jaw clenched. But she said nothing. She picked up her bag and stepped away from seat 1A. She didn't look at anyone. Not because she was sorry, but because she knew. The world had finally seen her for who she really was. Seat 1A was finally empty again. Elijah stood beside it for a moment, watching Catherine disappear into the aisle. The space she had occupied just minutes ago now seemed like a symbol of power misused, of entitlement unearned. He sat down slowly, not as a man claiming territory, but as one reclaiming peace. Across from him, the passenger in seat 1B, an older gentleman in a charcoal gray suit, leaned slightly toward him. "That was something," he said, voice low but steady. Elijah offered a small smile. "Yes, it was." The man nodded. "You handled that with more composure than most people ever could." "I've had practice," Elijah replied. "Too much of it, probably." They sat in silence for a moment. Then, footsteps approached from the rear of the cabin. It was Heather. She wasn't in uniform anymore. She had changed into a plain cardigan, her name tag gone, her shoulders slumped. But her face held something different now, something stripped of procedure and pride. "Mr. Brooks," she said softly, not meeting his eyes at first. I know sorry doesn't fix it. But I need to say it anyway." Elijah looked at her. Not through her, not past her, at her. "I appreciate that," he said simply. "I didn't see you," she continued. "I mean, I saw you. But not really." She paused, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I've worked here 7 years. I thought I was fair. I thought I knew better. But I didn't even look at your ticket." Elijah didn't interrupt. "I'd like to help fix what I broke," she added. "If there's ever a way." He studied her face for a beat. "Accountability," he said quietly, "starts when we stop defending ourselves. You're already doing more than some would." Heather nodded once, tears threatening behind her lashes. Then she turned and walked away. The man in 1B exhaled slowly. Maybe something good will come from all this. Elijah looked out the window. The sun was beginning to dip, casting golden streaks across the wing. "It already has," he said. And in that moment, the cabin felt lighter. Not because the damage was undone, but because the healing had finally begun. By the time the wheels left the runway, the world was already watching. What had started as a private moment of humiliation turned into a public moment of reckoning, streamed live, shared across every platform, translated into hashtags and headlines. Hashtag Seat 1A. Hashtag CO exposed discrimination. Hashtag Black Story. News outlets picked up the story mid-air. CNN ran a breaking segment titled, "CEO Confronts In-Flight Bias." MSNBC called it, "The Quiet Power of Leadership." Even Fox News couldn't ignore it, though their framing was more cautious. By the time Elijah's flight reached cruising altitude, the American Horizon corporate office was flooded with calls from journalists, shareholders, and civil rights leaders. The board of directors moved fast. A formal statement was issued within the hour, praising Elijah's composure, integrity, and commitment to equity. The legal department followed with an announcement, a full internal audit on racial bias across all flight operations. The airline stock dipped briefly, then rebounded stronger than before. Because something unusual had happened. Instead of trying to hide the incident, the company leaned into it. They owned it. And that transparency earned public trust. Other airlines scrambled. United, Delta, JetBlue, all issued press releases promising updated discrimination training, new reporting tools, and third-party audits. The Department of Transportation called for a summit on bias in commercial air travel. Elijah was invited to lead it. Tiana Coleman, the teenager whose live stream captured the entire event, gained 400,000 new followers in 48 hours. Her account became a hub for young people discussing race, bias, and power in everyday spaces. She was later offered a full scholarship in journalism at Howard University. And Catherine Summers? She deleted her social media accounts. Divine Glow Cosmetics placed her on administrative leave pending review. But more importantly, she became a conversation starter in boardrooms across the country. Elijah's actions, measured, intentional, firm, sparked more than outrage. They sparked reform. What happened on that flight wasn't just about a seat. It was about the moment we all stopped pretending bias only happens in the past tense. And as the plane flew high above the clouds, something else was rising too. A new standard. One led not by noise, but by quiet, undeniable truth. 6 months passed. The viral moment had faded from daily headlines, but its impact had not. Inside the sleek glass towers of American Horizon Air's headquarters in Atlanta, something had fundamentally changed. Every employee, from ticket agent to executive vice president, had now completed mandatory dignity training. Every plane was outfitted with discreet body cams for customer-facing crew. Every passenger complaint involving bias triggered an automatic review by a third-party oversight board. It wasn't just PR. It was policy. And the numbers proved it. Discrimination-related incidents dropped by 82%. Customer satisfaction ratings reached an all-time high. Employee morale had soared. Elijah Brooks sat in a boardroom, looking over the quarterly report. Charts, metrics, and testimonials filled the screen. But what struck him most weren't the numbers, it was the stories. A letter from a black veteran who finally felt seen by flight staff. An apology note from a former crew member who now trained others in bias awareness. A message from a passenger who had witnessed a gate agent step in to prevent a repeat of Flight 342 before it ever escalated. The ripple had become a wave. In that same building, Heather Green now led the company's new Inclusion and Accountability Division. After her initial suspension, she had completed 160 hours of education and shadowed civil rights advocates. She returned not just changed, but committed. "I didn't deserve to be given another chance," she told a new group of flight attendants in training. "But I was. And now it's my job to earn it every day." She wasn't alone. Mark Reynolds had taken a lower position voluntarily. He now assisted in developing virtual reality empathy training programs for flight crews nationwide. Even Catherine Summers had resurfaced, not in cosmetics, but in corporate consulting. She now led workshops on recognizing internalized bias. Her first public speech was titled, "What I Didn't Know Until I Got Caught." People were still talking about Flight 342, but now they spoke of it with something rare in stories like this, hope. Because reform had not just been promised. It had been delivered, tracked, measured, felt. And at the heart of it all was a single decision made by one man in one moment. To lead not by force, but by example. When people talk about leadership, they often picture someone at the front of a boardroom, delivering speeches, closing deals, making headlines. But sometimes, real leadership looks like standing silently in the aisle of an airplane, holding a boarding pass no one wants to see, while your dignity is questioned in front of hundreds of strangers. Elijah Brooks didn't make a scene. He made a statement. Not through anger. Not through shouting. But through presence. Through restraint. Through the simple refusal to accept what too many are expected to swallow. He knew something most people forget. Power is not about how loud you are. It's about how long you're willing to stand in truth while others try to ignore it. And that's the lesson. Dignity doesn't come from a uniform or a title. Respect isn't something earned through applause or appearance. It's a right. For every person. In every seat. On every flight. In every space. What happened on Flight 342 wasn't just about Elijah. It wasn't just about Catherine. It was about a system. A culture. A moment that gave us all a mirror. So here's the question. When you see injustice, what do you do? Do you turn away? Or do you pull out your phone and document it? Do you stay silent? Or do you speak? Because stories like this, they're not just entertainment. They're invitations. To reflect. To act. To to change something, big or small. And if this black story stirred something in you, if it made you angry, or hopeful, or simply more aware, then let that matter. Subscribe for more true stories that lift the veil. Stories that challenge assumptions and call us into accountability. Because silence is easy, but courage is contagious. And if you've ever faced injustice, at work, in travel, in life, drop your story in the comments. Not just for you, but for someone else who needs to know. They're not alone. Your voice could be the spark that starts the next wave of change.